Well, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:08. And so you guys have seen the agenda. The first item on the agenda is, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? And then we have no public, unless Leslie is public. So no public input. The next item is working group scope and procedures. And I just wanted to quickly sort of describe who we are and what we're doing in a generic sense, and then feel free to pipe in. But we are a working group, and we have been appointed to study and report on a particular question and make recommendations based on our findings. Specifically, we're studying the downhill mountain bike routes off the Wonder Trail on city lands as proposed by the Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association. Our findings are non-binding. Our report would go to the larger Trails Master Plan Committee. And then if further action is deemed desirable, then it would go on to the city council, presumably as an addendum to the Trails Master Plan. I'm going to try to mildly guide these meetings just to be efficient and on topic, and as transparent as possible. Anybody want to add to anything there?
Nay.
Too early to go through all that.
Yeah. No, I think, thanks, Torsten. Just in the last week, there's been a little bit of conversation in city council about these subgroups and sub meetings and, you know, all that, whether they're public. And I think this fits into that. And so thank you for doing that. The only thing is somebody taking notes?
Yeah, so I will volunteer to take notes. I think I'm supposed to take notes. If anyone else wants to take notes, by all means, please.
Yeah, I mean, I can give it a shot. I don't know if I'd be as thorough as Torsten, but maybe that would take something off your plate during the meeting since you're kind of running it.
Hold on, Leslie wants to interject here. Maybe she has some input.
I just wanted to stress that it can be half a page of a few conclusions. We discussed this. It can be very minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, really just decisions need to be captured, not entire conversations.
Yeah.
They have the entire conversation taped here.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, so Casey, if you want to be the secretary, that'd be awesome.
I'll do my best. I'll just do it in a Google Doc, and I'll because that's what I got, and then I'll send it out to you all after.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I asked, this is pursuant to the discussion of the scope, the working group scope and procedures. I discussed with Leslie and Michael Black about can we look more broadly at downhill routes off Wonder, or do we specifically have to address the original proposals as presented by RVMBA? And both Michael and Leslie said, no, go ahead and think broadly. So in fact, we can entertain alternatives like what David was suggesting.
By the way, the David and Jeff proposal is actually another look at bailout number 2, the original proposal. If you look at that, I don't know if you have the map handy, but if you look at the map, it basically came down and went through the water treatment plant, and all we did was redirect it so it came down to the Forest Service gate and avoided the plant.
So in other words, we can interpret your route as a derivation of the original proposal.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know if I've seen that recently. Was that sent out or is that available?
It's on Torsten's map.
I sent you a link to the CalTopo map, and in
Oh,
the
I see
interest of
there.
in the interest of transparency, we're going to have to get that on a public website. I think we can discuss that, but eventually it's going to have to appear so
Okay.
the public can see it.
All right, I can see it now. Thank you. So does that second route, that's basically there's kind of like a perimeter around the proposed water treatment facility, it looks almost like a fence line.
It is a fence, yeah, security fence.
And essentially that's just what we need to stay out of for any proposal.
Correct.
Okay.
But that actually raises a bunch of questions. I think it would behoove us as a group to do some fact finding, and specifically, I think we should find out, is this the most recent map? Are we dealing with the most up-to-date information regarding the water treatment plant? Because that certainly affects any trails that we might want to propose. The other question relatedly is, when is that going to happen? And is it definitely going to happen?
Right.
So I don't know if one of you would like to volunteer to talk to maybe Kevin at Public Works to get the most up-to-date info.
I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess back to your point about, how wide ranging we can look, this would be my assumption is that, the point of us getting together instead of, adopting and, one specific route on these lines, I would think we need to be able to have the ability to look at, some derivatives, or, if we get into finding out that, oh, the fence line changed, so, we need to be able to move around a bit.
Right.
Within reason, obviously, and staying within the goal. So I think that would be good if we know what the bottom line objective is. And so if we're considering alternatives, as long as we're, within that alternative. So, the objective could be as simple as a bailout from the Wonder Trail that accesses the west side of the water treatment plant, and like that. But I will, I'll inquire about the water treatment plant.
Great. I had asked Leah Richards if she had a more up-to-date map. She worked for GIS, and she had no more recent map than what we have.
Is this a good time to discuss what happens to existing Lower Wonder if it's within that perimeter?
Yeah, we should. I think it does impact. Yeah, I think this is a good time to discuss that.
Yeah, because obviously there's a couple switchbacks in there at the bottom. Looks like
Right.
the northernmost edge is clear. Yeah, so go ahead, Torsten. You've probably thought about this a little bit.
Yeah, so Kevin actually apprised us of that possibility before we even built that trail. And he said, I think it's going to be here. But I have to tell you, the border moved. So originally the fence line was down by the creek.
Gotcha.
And for various reasons, it couldn't be there. And then it moved uphill, and you can actually see where they drilled. And the trail actually goes right over one of the drilling places. And the fence moved up from there. It does get steeper to the, I guess it would be the northeast. And so when the trail gets moved, it's going to be on a steeper side slope for a while. There's still room there to create a trail, but it'll be more challenging. It ends up going close to where there used to be an irrigation ditch.
You can kind of see it on the map.
Yeah.
It pops up as a flat area.
Yep.
on the topo.
Yeah. So we'll be able to use that. We'll probably tie into that, and then we have to do a switch back up another steep grade, which we can do. It's not the end of the world. And if we have to, we can move the entire trail further north. There's room.
So one of the main reasons that was given originally for not being able to put a bailout trail on that side was due to that steep slope. So I'm wondering, is that a different slope or?
It is a different slope. So that it's too bad we don't have a map to display. I wonder if I could do that.
I'm looking at your map now. I wonder if I could screen share, but you probably are running, you probably have those powers on the screen share
I
power.
think I can, let's see. I can screen share. Let's see, I'll bring up the
I guess I
map.
should screen share if I'm taking notes.
Let's see. Okay, I'm about to screen share. Would screen sharing help everybody?
Yeah, it helped me a lot.
Let me. Okay. Is the map appearing for you?
Yeah,
thanks.
great.
And I can sort of toggle the transparency if that helps. So for example, I can fade out the water
wow.
treatment plant map,
Yeah,
and I can add the slope angle shading, which kind of helps for this discussion. So the redder is
Yeah.
steeper, and if it's purple, it's really steep. But the area of concern, Casey, for the side slope being too steep is this area. Can you guys see my mouse kind of scrolling?
I'm
over that
remembering
area?
now from that FLC meeting, this was discussed, and I'm remembering there's a house just to the north of there, right?
Yeah, there's a house down here at the bottom of this gully. It doesn't really depict as a gully, but that's what it is.
you
Right,
can
okay.
see with the V's in the topo lines.
Yeah.
Torsten, can you sort of use your pointer there to show where that side skid trail was that we walked down?
Yeah, that's actually Casey's dotted blue line here.
Okay, that's what
That's
we
basically
walked.
Leslie
it.
and I walked the same, and Ian and Brooke walked the same trail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that's it. And there's several places you can see a little hint of purple where my mouse is there.
Yeah, it gets
That's a
close.
steep area. All this red is steep, and it all drains down to this gully, pretty much.
Yeah, there's an area just at the top to the south too, where that you could avoid that by coming down that ridge where it's less steep.
Yeah,
In here,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, it seems like that, that's not a bad, besides that, that U into the red,
Mm-hmm.
if we could, switch back, resolve that.
I think I agree with you, but I would raise the following issue, which is that's all fine if this blue dotted line were to continue the way Casey proposed it, going right through the water treatment plant.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you've got this nice bailout trail that dumps right into Wonder.
Yeah.
So you-
The exit's a
so you-
problem.
and there's nowhere else to go. There's
Yeah.
no room out here. This is all really steep,
yeah,
and I don't know where you'd send the people other than down the trail. And it gets
which is we're trying to keep as an uphill route.
right
What about to the west?
to the west.
Yeah, right below your cursor, basically coming down and tying into Dave and Jeff's reroute.
Yeah, so-
I'm not sure, but
Yeah, that might be a possibility.
It would kind of cut below those cliffs or the quarries, you know?
Right. And I don't know if you can see, I'll zoom in a bit, but this is pretty steep also in here.
Right.
So you
Those are the
want to
cliffs
cut
of
over,
Dover.
you'd want to cut over pretty much where David's route is, because there aren't that many. Well, maybe David, you can speak to this. Are there other places?
The, right where your cursor are the white cliffs of Dover.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, I looked at any of the switchbacks above our trail you could connect to. The purple line there is just one
Hmm.
look that we made,
Hmm.
but if you can't see it, but Casey's original trail scooted all the way along those switchbacks, so you could take off of any of the switchbacks and come down.
Gotcha. That's good to know. Yeah, kind of right where between the red existing and where it turned, yeah, right where your cursor is, that little knob.
Mhm.
Looks like it's a little lower angle, going up to the west to where you're done with the switchbacks almost. And that would kind of maximize the amount of trail, which I think is a good thing. It would get you kind of a longer run, if it was feasible building area. Yeah.
Also, the route coming down by the water treatment plant is on the other side of a ridge.
Mhm.
So you're well away from their fence. In fact, you can't even see the plant.
Right, which, yeah, there's definitely advantages to that.
But again,
Certainly, yeah.
it requires, like if you said, if you could come off of any of the switchbacks and you're still on the switchbacks, which is part of the uphill only part. Right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. You want to leave the uphill and take off onto a downhill.
Right, but to
She's-
get to
she's being-
that, you're traveling on some of the uphill only. You know, from the top on the edge of the map, at the top edge of
Oh,
the
you're saying
map, where
from
the
the blue
cursor
line?
is. Yeah, like,
Right.
so where is the uphill only trail is what's in red, correct?
Correct.
So to come down, you would.
Yeah.
um,
I see what you're saying. I think you're saying that if you were traveling on this blue and then you cut across, you'd end up on the uphill going downhill to get out here. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, or if you were to come off of any of the closer switchbacks, you'd have to be, you know, there'd be some of this uphill only you'd be traveling on, unless you came on the, just to the left of your purple line, where right there, like through that area that's not yellow or anything,
Mhm.
having almost parallel switchbacks to get down to your
Yeah.
purple.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think trail crossings are an issue, but if we can avoid them, I think that's probably ideal. So I kind of like the idea of not combining 2 and 1, bail out 2 and bail out 1, or bail out 2 to Dave and Jeff's reroute, just to keep people kind of the traffic flow going the right direction, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not an issue on BTI really at all. You don't see people cutting off onto but just thinking out loud, I mean, I kind of like the idea of like a separate, just keeping them separate, right? But
Well, I guess what I'm talking about is, where the trail is red, and it's going, it's going straight from the bottom of the map, and it's going straight, and it's going through this yellow and red, and then you get into the gray, Is there a way you could bail out there and tie into the purple?
So where my cursor is?
Yeah, where
right
your
now?
cursor is right
Yeah.
there.
That's about where Casey's original bailout 2 started.
So this actually raises some questions. So I happen to know, because of building this trail, there was a geological engineering geology report. And basically from the cursor to about here, all this area was subject to scrutiny. And so right now we have to monitor this every year to see if there's any problems with this area. But the engineering geology report suggested that this area here was not desirable for a trail. And
But
that,
maybe just a little bit below that.
Yeah, what
because
about a little bit to the south?
if,
yeah, down
because
here.
if, yeah, because if I remember right, this, the part of the trail that's sort of paralleling the topo lines, that's an old skid trail. And it gets very steep above that because it was a cut, it's a bench.
That's
The
correct.
skid trail is a bench.
Yep.
So there would be room for two-way traffic where it's paralleling the topo lines. And then like right before you leave the parallel of the topo lines, and maybe right before you're getting into that very unstable area, staying on this side of it, if you could bail down to the purple lines.
Yeah, I'm kind of, if in terms of a bailout number using that side, I think that would be kind of what I would want to look at closer.
Yeah, kind of like right where your cursor is in that
Yeah.
area.
So
Staying on the, below that.
this area.
Yeah, because
Yep.
see, that looks like it's kind of a ridge.
Yeah.
And on the west side of the ridge is the really unstable part. And if we'd stayed on this side of the ridge, maybe we would be in better shape.
So this is where Chris Chambers wanted us, AWTA, to route Wonder to stay away from this area.
Yeah.
And so we walked this. It's a very dry, decomposed granite and where they planted a bunch of ponderosas that aren't being very successful. So it's highly erosive. It's like a sand dune. So, maybe there's some place in there, and maybe with good construction practices, you could make it work. But I'm just going to tell you, for the purposes of the Wonder Trail, we rejected this for a pedestrian trail. So it might be somewhat challenging for a mountain bike trail. Not to say that it can't be done.
So I guess the question becomes, if we wanted to get above the climb switchbacks, kind of probably the most likely option or would be to maybe utilize that bailout too and then cross to the purple route. Is that what I'm hearing? Or
well, yeah. So I guess the other question I would raise, or maybe a fact-finding mission, is can we actually even build anything here? Or can we even use the existing trail bed?
It would be more of I think the question would be using existing. I've walked it, and I mean, if it wasn't covered with limbs and brush, it would be pretty much rideable now. So I don't think there'd be too much construction. What you could do where it straightens out towards the bottom, but now we're not even talking about using that. But just the one thing I did notice was maybe just putting a couple turns where it turns straight, kind of from your cursor to the east.
Right.
But the upper part, I guess I think that's that would be a good fact-finding mission to see if it would even be usable. But I would think using the existing cuts and trail beds would be the idea rather than constructing new trail on that side.
I
But
think
who
from
would,
an engineering geologist perspective, it won't matter whether you're building new or
okay,
using, at least that was our experience.
that's interesting.
But yeah, you'd think a roadbed would make that it has some history. It's been there, but
Yeah, I'm like, do they take that into consideration? I was thinking when you said that one spot that was unstable that you have to monitor yearly, if that hasn't, well, first of all, has that moved or been an
No.
issue?
No.
So if it hasn't, is that something they would take into a new geo report of, oh, we've had this for 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is, and it hasn't moved, so is that something is used?
I think the last 4 years aren't very representative of, I think they're looking at 100-year, rain events and what would
But at
happen.
the same time, that old roadbed is.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably
you
50
know,
to 80
it's
years old,
20, 30 years old.
probably older, yeah,
Yeah,
50s or 60s, right?
yeah.
Much older,
I
yep.
mean, I'm
There are
not a
also two road
geologist.
cuts. There are also two road cuts there, one
Mhm.
above it on your map.
Yeah.
So it's pretty stable.
Yeah, there was another one. Yeah, I guess,
To me, that's a pretty easy place to build it. I'm pretty confident you could use the whole blue line there. But the biggest problem is what happens when you get the intersection. There's room right from where your cursor is, there's room to go above Wonder slightly and have a parallel that gets you down a ways. But
Up here?
eventually you're going to tie into Wonder.
I
And
think
you're
to
gonna have
the,
two-way traffic.
are you talking where Torsten's cursor is, or were you talking above that?
No,
Talking
I'm
about-
talking where right in there. Right
Yeah.
in there, you can do a side cut above it.
Yeah.
At some point, when you get down right
Mhm.
where he's heading, right where the illegal section is that we have to move anyway. Down in there, you're going to have to join Wonder.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah,
it's almost like the straight one that leaves the water treatment plant and heads along the creek bed needs to be a road in order to support two-way bike traffic.
right.
And there's plenty of room to do that.
You mean after the water treatment plant goes in? Because
Yeah,
this area is super steep.
right. In there, you'd have to like weave the trails. It'd be a mess.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is bailout number 2 is easy to build, but you've got to tie into existing Wonder somehow, and that's a mess.
Yeah.
And the other side is harder to build, but no conflicts. So take your choice.
So, I guess this goes back to our first kind of action item, which was to talk to Public Works about any updated maps or any timeline. And if they say we don't know, I mean, is it feasible to go, or, I mean, can we build something? It sounds like it already happened. Like you guys built Lower Wonder with the idea that you might have to shift it later. And the kind of, we touched on that in our original proposal, of creating something that we would know might go away and just,
Right.
We
But
built that, Torsten built that with the permission of the city,
of course we'd get permission.
but you won't get permission to go through the water treatment plant site.
Because it's further along than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Is that why?
Yep. I mean, you can use that all you want right now until they put a fence up, but you can't be putting it on a map, calling it a published route.
going back to the blue, the bailout number 2, and where Dave, that you pointed where you could have parallel trails, but at some point you'd have to weave down. So if you're continuing going north, I believe that is,
Mhm.
can you skirt around the east side of that red? I mean, stay in between the red trail and the red steep
Mm-hmm.
parallel, and then really bail out through the yellow down, down to the road
To the north, yeah.
to the north. Yeah. So like stay parallel to the red and then come out where there's a gap of just yellow and no red
Right.
to the north of that biggest switchback.
Yeah, and is that public or private? I guess that would be the
That
question.
I have no idea.
But I see exactly what you're saying. Kind of,
Sorry. I missed part of that where the public, Private.
Which direction is up, Torsten?
up is north.
Okay, thanks.
so zoom
Um,
back, Torsten, zoom back. Yeah, right there where the switchbacks are, going down.
Yep,
Okay, right
Popping
there.
north, like northeast through that yellow,
through here.
down to Granite, I guess.
Yeah, this is all public.
How about
But
where the
it's-
yellow is?
Like
This
even
is-
a little, like right there.
This is all public too. I'll put up parcel data here so you can
There we
see.
go.
So where your cursor was right there, what if we had the parallel to the uphill trail?
This,
Yeah,
so
and right in through there, just go straight down to the road.
I think
or,
this
you
is
know.
one of those situations where you really need to walk this because this is deceptive. It's depicted as yellow, but pretty much everything to the right of where my cursor is too steep to build,
Okay,
except for you can kind of see where the old ditch went. It's sort of flat here.
yeah,
That's the only place you can really safely go. So if I were to reroute Wonder because of this fence line, I would take it out this ditch and then make a turn in here just to avoid all this fence line.
Well, if you rerouted Wonder, well, it still doesn't solve below there. But I was thinking that perhaps the bike trail could utilize kind of what's existing if that was kind of no longer the hike trail.
Mhm.
And then you'd still have to deal with that switchback, kind of where it says 5 foot tall security fence. It's still, I guess it just doesn't solve the traffic issue of where you finally exit.
Yeah. I'm finding that, or just listening to this, it sounds like we're going through hypotheticals, but we'd still have to get sort of an engineering geology approval for this upper part.
Right.
And my understanding, as it stands, you wouldn't be allowed to build a trail there.
Did they got a report?
There is a report, and it was kind of for this whole area. And we were highly discouraged from going anywhere where my mouse is circulating.
yeah,
But I think that's one of those things that it would behoove us to do ahead of time before pursuing all these hypotheticals, and even before hiking way down here, is to find out what existing engineering geology reports are, and is there wiggle room? Is there, can we get another one? Do we need to get another one?
Yeah, does a new geo report supersede any pre-existing? Like that's a better question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
well, I know from, the last geo report that we got for that last one that you and Chris and I went on, Torsten.
Mhm.
It said there's a new geologist. He's kind of clueless about trails, but he's the geologist that they have, and it's rather expensive to bring him out in the first place. But it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Mhm.
But if we had the specific report that they do have on hand, along with, the most recent developments on the water treatment plant, seems to me, although I haven't been paying real close attention, there has been some discussion in city council about that water treatment plant. And, so I don't know, but when I go to get the most recent on the water treatment plant, I will ask for the most recent geology report so that we have it in front of us.
Okay,
Yeah, that'd be
I'll
great.
write that down.
As a note, Jeff, he and I walked the blue line that day that you didn't go, Torsten.
Mhm.
His opinion is we can make that legal.
Hmm.
And he's been involved in the geology for quite a long time.
Is that Jeff McFarland?
Right.
So you're talking about this bailout number 2, this part.
That the section that's highlighted, we can probably make legal.
So Chris Chambers was pretty adamant that that was a tall order.
But it was because of the existing road cut. Because you can control the water pretty easily along that cut.
Yeah, and that was Chris Chambers too, but I think he was I got the impression that he was mostly concerned, not on the whole thing, but again, where, where the red line and the blue line came together and below that.
Oh,
Because of its
absolutely.
impact on the proposed.
Yeah, so whereas the blue line, while we're walking along the road, yeah, it seemed hunky-dory, but then we went, but where would it come out?
So there's basically 2 components to bailout number 2. Number 1 is, can we use I'll call it the upper section. Number 2 is, how do you exit the lower section? I'd like to go out and I guess it doesn't make sense until we have an updated, making sure the water treatment lines are correct. But I'd like to see if there's a way to tie into the purple route from the exit, kind of just above the fence. Yeah, I know it's cliffy and there's stuff in there, but
No,
impossible.
I don't think that's going to work.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up. Usually I can get some satellite imagery.
Right.
Yeah, you had
Yeah.
it there for a second.
It's a tricky section in there because it's been just torn apart over 50 years. The weird cliffs and stuff.
That kind of shows you. Let's see if I can toggle
Yeah.
things down here.
Yeah, now you're
yeah.
at the light brown beige area.
That's all the cliffs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we tied in above it.
Yep.
To our opinion, that was the lowest switchback that you could tie into.
Okay. It's good to
Yeah.
know.
Kind of looking at this. Yeah. Anything that's kind of tan is
Cliffed out.
questionable.
That's interesting, though, that it's not mapped as red
Yeah, it is.
or even
yeah.
yellow.
Yeah. I don't know how this mapping algorithm works, frankly. So you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
I mean, just looking at it, you'd have to think that would be the steepest area in the whole section map.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess it comes back to the hypothetical of could you cross the trail and hook up blue to purple? But
In this area, maybe.
yeah, I mean, that's all uphill though, probably above that blue line. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe you could traverse it across a little to the west, and then coming southeast,
Sorry, I'm going to draw it.
That's a road cut, so you've got to climb the cut. to get to the red line.
Right, yeah, so we'd want to cross it, so there'd be minimal
So
climbing.
let me just try to draw something and it'll tell me what the slope is. So if I want to, where my cursor is, if I want to pop
Sure.
out here
Yeah, or even a little to the west of where your original cursor was,
over here.
just to save a little more elevation, perhaps.
Oh, you mean
Yeah.
starting up here further?
Yeah, yes, starting like towards the entrance a little further. Yeah, that direction. I don't know, just to play with
Okay,
it. I
I'll
mean,
just draw something here. Let's see, oops.
but my idea it wouldn't be a 90-degree across. It would be more of like like trying to keep your elevation further up and crossing.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, who knows? That's a lot more building. That's pretty cool. I haven't messed with CalTopo too much.
Well,
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. So
It's a
it's,
little draw.
it's down and then up, curiously.
yeah. But if that's the lowest switchback,
yeah.
then maybe you could bring the purple up a couple switchbacks and still make it work. But I'm guessing that whole thing is just a hillside.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be interesting to go hike around out there and see if you could make a connection without any crazy. That'd probably require some walking around.
What I can do is I can make this a PDF map, or if you have the CalTopo app, you can.
I have Gaia, and normally I can import things from anywhere to Gaia. So I might be able to grab this GPX file and just put it into my it'll just pop up on my mapping app.
You can just crop part of Torsten's map and save it as a PDF geo-reference and put it on your Gaia.
Right. Okay. Kind of like they overlaid the map there.
Does that work on Gaia? You can use GPS PDFs?
Actually, I'm not positive about that because I've been
not
using
sure either.
Venza for so long since I used Gaia. I don't remember.
I think I could find a way to get this stuff on there. I already have bailout number 2 because I've walked it and the climb trail. I just don't have Dave and Jeff's route.
Yeah, well, I can make that more public.
So, yeah, I mean, so I guess there's a lot of ways to go forward in terms of figuring out, but I also think that we're going to be kind of funneled into one choice here. Like we don't have a ton of options because of various factors. So I think we need to create a process on how we can get through that funnel, whether it's going through those action items of getting the most updated maps, or I mean, I can go walk that and put that on my list and just see if there would be anywhere to cross over. But I'm not sure, Torsten. We could talk about options, until we're blue in the face, but eventually we're going to get moved into one direction here. And how do we get to that?
Right.
It's kind of strikes me if you're only using like a third of your bailout 2, that it's not worth going up there. You might as well have taken off at the top switchback before you get to the, like 1, 2, 3 switchbacks above my purple line.
Yeah.
Just start up there and go down.
Yeah, that might be.
Right where your cursor is, I think it's right there. I dropped a little pink flag that we can look from.
Yeah. At what point does it turn into that sand dune type stuff? Is
immediately as you leave, there you probably have to do a little bit of cribbing.
Yeah.
Above and below your trail for a short distance, but then it's okay. And there's also some existing trails going off in there that we can follow. In fact, I think Torsten probably mapped them when, remember the original Wonder that was more parallel to the road?
Yeah.
I think there's one up in there.
Yeah, so it seems like the order of events should be finding out engineering geology information for this entire area. And I suspect there's something, and Syl, you might be able to find out more about this area in general in terms of forestry reports. 'Cause
Yeah,
I know the city has done a lot of work in here.
they have. And so they would have a lot of information about it. And where your cursor is, and you know, and going up to, again, where the trail is going parallel with the topo, where the red trail is going parallel with the topo lines,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
going through the trees, if you could tie in from that point rather than on the switchbacks.
I think it's worth checking out if we can find somewhere outside of that sandy area that Torsten was talking about, because you could almost peel it back to coming from the south, heading north, and then dropping east before you hit the purple trail.
Yeah, and certainly if,
Maybe you would
I
avoid
mean,
that.
where there's more vegetation and, you know, tree cover looks like it's more stable than, you know, what's wide open with no tree cover.
Right. I'd like to look at that if we're talking about not using bailout too. Because honest, you know, from our perspective, we want to try to get basically you're not going to hit a point on any of these plans where it's going to be too much climbing for someone at the intermediate or even beginner level. So in that case, I'd like to see it use the most elevation that we can. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, you know, as I'm looking more at the, you know, on your aerial photography, where the your red trail is, it looks like it crosses two draws there, but it's staying parallel to the topo lines at the bottom of the map. At the bottom of the map, there's looks like
Yep.
there's two dark drainages there.
Bottom
And
left,
it's
right?
bottom left. And then right above that second, that's one drainage. And then above that, there's a shorter
This one?
one. And if you got beyond that, you're you know, you're still on, it's like an old roadbed. So if you could bail down through the trees through that to tie on to the purple.
Right. And just knowing that you'd have to do it somewhere before it switches to Forest Service.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this purple line here is the Forest Service boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's quite steep all through here, going this direction, even though it's treed. Doesn't mean you can't build something there, but could be challenging. Let's see.
Yeah, we looked at switchbacking all the way up to Wonder on the purple line. But you're right, it pitches up pretty steeply.
Yeah, there's
We tried to follow that ridge all the way up. There's a ridge that goes right up to Wonder.
right.
It would be a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably get I mean, it's going to depend on the engineering, whatever we find, but you could probably try to find a professional trail builder to come take a look and just see what it would entail to create something that was feasible.
You
I
got
the concept.
Torsten's a professional.
Well,
Not until I get paid.
I don't mean that, but just bringing someone in who's experienced building bike specific stuff to, might be different. But I don't know if Torsten, if you think you can make that decision too. I was just thinking having a different set of eyes who has built in similar challenging conditions could be good. And I have a lot of contacts in that field. So kind of where Torsten's cursor is, I know who knows what the slope angle really means, but from there kind of heading back southwest to the trail.
In here?
Yeah, a little more. Yeah. And then a little more west, there's another blob that doesn't have any color on it.
Uh-huh.
Maybe exploring that area and seeing how accurate the slope angle shading is and punching something through that area. I'm just looking at this in terms of how can we avoid any of the colors that are auto-populating.
Yeah. Yeah, because there almost looks like, there's some openings there in the
Right.
veg.
Let me see if I can bring up better info. I'm gonna add the contours here. Let's see, get rid of the slope angle shading.
Yeah, sometimes contours are even a little easier to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the contour, you can see the ridge come right up to Wonder underneath that belly, right at the bottom corner,
Yeah,
but it's steep.
yeah, you can, but then it widens out, the contours widen out before you get to the switchbacks,
Right.
kind of like right in there where the elevation
This one?
marker is, like in through there. I could see having, going through the veg and, maybe having a couple switchbacks in there to tie into the purple.
I mean, to be
But-
honest, it's no
ahead.
steeper than what's already there with the existing Lower Wonder, right? I mean, you guys figured it out there, and we're not talking
Yeah.
about building Jabberwocky here. We're talking about a pretty mild descent. Like not the big dish berms or extra earthwork.
Right.
Yeah, one of the areas we looked at it coming down would be like 2 more contour lines from where your hand was. So just 2 contour lines between, yeah, right there. See where that hits Wonder? You don't want to go off a Wonder at the end of a switch point. You want to go off in between. So if you take that contour line in a little bit, like up,
Sorry,
right
up here.
over in there somewhere is where you'd probably break out and start heading down. Rather, because you don't want to break out of a turn, right?
Why not?
Because somebody would shoot off the turn. I don't know. It just seems hard to make an intersection in a turn.
At the
what if
lower
you-
end of a turn?
Yeah, I mean, you're
You're
powering
going
up,
this way.
powering up on your bike to make the turn.
Oh,
and
I
then
see.
halfway through the turn, you decide I'm gonna take off.
It'd have to be at
I
the
see
lower
what you mean.
end.
But
Uh,
it depends on the nature of the turn. If it's a turn on a steep slope,
Right.
it's a problem. But if it's on a flat, and you can rejigger some of these turns to make it accommodate.
It's just that when I was walking it, if you go up from your cursor, you move your cursor up just a little bit on either side of that, right there, or on the other side of the lower part of the
next one.
turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Somewhere in there, he's saying.
Yeah, anywhere in there, you got plenty of room to break off
Yeah.
at a nicer angle. And it looks like an intersection rather than, anyway.
Yeah.
So something you said, use of the trail, and you said it's not a Jabberwocky.
Mhm.
In your notes, you call it downhill bike only.
Mhm.
I would tend to not, we haven't talked about this. I would tend to not want to do that. I would say multi-use downhill bike. but I wouldn't want to build it super fast with bank turns. It strikes me that it would make a nice pedestrian loop as well as a returning bike loop.
Well, there's a whole other kettle of fish you've just raised.
I mean, if that's the
David.
case, then why can't we just use the end of Lower Wonder for a bike exit, right?
Well, like I said, you could, if you widen, you can make a parallel trail for a little bit, and then you have to hit a wider trail that would support two-way traffic.
Torsten,
Well,
you got
and
anything on that?
With that logic, I would say then go back to where the trail is on the bench further up and come off through there. Because those benches and the existing roads, either bailout number 2 or the red at the bottom of the map, the red trail at the bottom of the map, those are, they're following the contour lines, and those are road beds. So to me,
You're talking-
those are,
The red at the bottom of the map is where Torsten's cursor is, or are you looking somewhere
no,
else?
I mean, bottom left.
Bottom left.
Oh,
So
right.
Up there.
that's a road bed. And so it seems to me that if you can find a less steep place to tie into the purple without going into the switchbacks at all, then your two-way traffic is only on the, on that bench roadbed.
But this roadbed is uphill as you travel south.
Right.
And it's relatively steep. It's a roadbed, but it's still a steep climb, having climbed it on my bike a lot.
Okay.
But let's back up just a second here to David's point, because I think it deserves some discussion.
Yeah.
I'll just say right off the bat, I am not in favor of making any of these downhill mountain bike trails multi-use. I think they should be single use, one direction mountain bike trails. I think trying to shoehorn in pedestrians with downhill mountain bikes in this area,
Right.
is a mistake. I think.
So then you might as well build it like Jabberwocky.
Well, it costs more money to do that. It's more moving dirt.
Well,
I get what you're saying, but the
let's
idea
talk
is,
about what you mean by Jabberwocky, because I think what you're talking about is big berm turns, bank turns.
well, and Jabberwocky's also machine built versus hand built,
Right.
which we don't have the resources or want to pursue a machine built trail here.
It has to do with how much speed you want.
Well, I'm
Yeah, and
going to
what-
offer another perspective, is that the more socially acceptable, meaning I think what Torsten's talking about, keeping pedestrians and downhill separate. I think if we propose something that works for the most people, that we might be able to get the resources needed to do it, rather than having the resources to do something that wouldn't be as popular for the general public.
I would say
In
that
terms of grants and things like that.
one of the main goals of creating this is to create a green level trail near the bottom of the watershed. I'd call Jabberwocky a blue, bordering on black when the conditions are not right.
We're talking degrees of difficulty here in case.
Green would be like a beginner
Yeah.
trail.
Yeah.
Which one
And
is chance of death? Is that black?
that's probably a triple.
That's a double black diamond.
Yeah, we're not looking for we're not proposing any of those. So, but it's all in trail design, right? Like once you have your route, you could have a trail built on the same planes and contours, and one could be a black trail when you're done with it, and one could be a green. It more has to do with creating the rolls and jumps and berms, and while a berm turn I think is good for any level of trail, you know, then you talk about the radius of the berms and the steepness of the berms, and there's a lot that goes into it. So for our VMBA in creating this, we want to create an approachable green trail for beginners. And my only concern about pedestrians would be now you're having maybe some people learning how to ride, interacting with pedestrians, even if it is at lower speed.
Not to mention dogs and dogs off leash and other challenges.
I'm supportive of multi-use trails, but I don't know if I am supportive of them this low in the watershed, because it just sees that much more traffic, and the more traffic you increase, the more you have potential for conflict. Yeah.
Given that, I would lean towards your blue bailout too, because it's less work.
Yeah, it's less work.
Sil, I want to comment on your comment about the potential for more money if more people were able to use the trail. And I guess I would just say BTI used to be a multi-use trail. And when it became a mountain bike only trail, more people used it.
Okay.
And I think that analogy works for this as well. I think if it were a multi-use trail, I think a lot of pedestrians wouldn't use it, and fewer mountain bikers would use it because of the fact that they'd be sharing the same trail.
Well, that I can see that. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think more information, and I'll get what I can about the geology of and the water treatment plant in that whole area.
We started, Torsten, creating kind of an order of events that would need to happen. And so far I have the engineering geo info needed, along with forestry reports needed. So if we want to continue on that list, I can just type in anything else and we can put them in order once we have them laid out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, the water treatment plant status, engineering reports, and forestry data. And I suppose, I mean, if we're going to be thorough, wildlife data. If Marty Maines were here, he'd be asking us to do that.
Okay, where do we get that from?
Oh no.
Same,
Forestry?
same, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I can probably do, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I like hiking. So I'd like to go out and just walk around a little bit more to see kind of the upper reaches of what's possible, literal upper reaches kind of above, how we would tie into that purple route. As that purple route seems, just even from this first discussion, as probably the most feasible, unless something is drastically different with the water treatment, which it could, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? City council could probably put that on hold next week and for 10 years, or I don't know. So I might go walk around and I can contact you all if anyone wants to go walk it just to refresh.
Always happy to go walking. I'd rather walk than Zoom.
Yeah, same here.
And that might be our next meeting might be a hiking meeting, and maybe if we have some more data, some background info, and then we can use that for some informed hiking.
Yeah,
There you go.
I'll work on that this week, getting that information. I mean, either they have it or they don't. So
Right.
I think the longest amount of time will be getting somebody to call me back.
Yeah, and kind of my frustration with the process in the last few years is when this data is referenced, but they can't produce it. So if they have it or they don't, if they don't have it, but they're telling us they're going off previous things, but they can't produce it, then what's the step? You know, like we need to see it on paper. Like I'd rather see a no on paper than have a no that's like, well, we did this report 5-10 years ago, but no one has it. So that's unacceptable to me. So yeah, that's
Well,
kind of, I'm excited to see what you dig up.
well, yeah, thanks for that. I'm one of the skills I have is I'm not proud of it, but I am a bureaucrat. I have a lot of skills as a bureaucrat. And like I said, I'm not proud of it, but they do come in handy once in a while. So I don't mind asking for that written no.
Okay, so right now can I go over the kind of what I have is, I
Yeah.
guess. So the order of events to find out what's possible, engineering, geo info, forestry reports, water treatment, plant status, wildlife data, and then walking potential trail routes. Are we kind of good with that list?
Yeah. And you have people assigned to those.
Yeah,
different-
so I have Sil going after the engineering, geo, and forestry reports. And then we need, if someone else can take on this other stuff, I can jump in if needed, but I'd like to see if anyone wants to check into the water treatment plant status and the wildlife data before I pick something, just because life is busy right now.
I'll just do that all at the same time.
Okay.
Because the forestry stuff, wildlife, and geo is gonna be in the same place.
Yeah.
And the water treatment plant is a phone call that either they have it or they don't.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So basically, Sil is going to do everything.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing.
Well, hopefully, if it's two-stop shopping.
Yeah, the
I mean, I might still come out empty-handed, but I'll at least try.
Great.
And then walking potential routes, I'd say potentially, I'll just put potential next meeting on that.
And I'm going to find out from, I guess, well, maybe Leslie can answer this question, but if we have to notify, if it's a public meeting, if more than 2 of us go on a hike.
I think, yeah, I think if 2 of you, yeah, I was thinking about that because there are 4 members of the subcommittee of the, working group.
Yeah.
I don't know, we're being like definitely over zealous about this, but I think it's necessary given the political climate in Ashland at the moment. So yeah, I think it would be better to make it a public, it would be better to make it a meeting and a field trip that's publicly noticed, similar to what we're doing with Imperatrice.
But if it were just 2 people, it would be not a public meeting, right?
I don't know, that's half the group.
Yeah, but it's not a quorum.
Yeah, so I guess pairs are okay. If, yeah, it's not a quorum. The problem is, yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that like Jeff's gonna want to go, and well, unless you kind of make sure that you're only 2 at a time, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So if Jeff were to go, he's not a part of this working group.
Yeah, I discussed this with
Michael Black.
Michael Black, and he said that that's because we're all in the subcommittee, that is
Okay.
not okay.
Okay. Well, let's make sure to dot our i's and cross our t's, because I don't really want to do this all over again. Let's just do this once effectively.
I think if you have a field trip, like there's going to be multiple people that aren't on the working group that might want to go and show up, including, you know, random commissioners like me or Rick, or, you know, so And it doesn't, Dorinda's doing a great job noticing it, so let's just notice it.
Okay.
Also, I don't know if you saw this, Torsten, but on the Imperatrice visit, Mike Morrison said we have to have waivers signed for public.
Oh, I didn't see that yet. Yeah. I'm not surprised.
So, but we know how to do that, right?
We do.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, it seems like then it's probably the easiest and least amount of hassle is to just keep it in pairs.
To start, and then I think really any I don't know how to describe this, but any actionable intelligence, pursuit of intelligence be done publicly as a group and publicly noticed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe these early explorations, doing it in pairs, taking a map with you,
Right.
on being able to show where you went. And then when we have something a little bit more solid, then that's when we start involving public noticing.
Right. Yep. So we might go out as a group of 4 and make it a publicly noticed event, and then Leslie and everybody else can go as well.
mhm.
But we might as well do our data gathering before that, and that would be the first item.
We may want to consider having Mr. Chambers be available to walk bailout 2, get his opinion up front.
But we have,
We
He's walked
kind
with
of
you?
already know it, but yeah,
He's walked with you on that route?
yes,
Okay, and he still didn't like it?
no.
Interesting. Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah. But, maybe his opinion has changed. It's been a few years. I'm going to guess not. I mean, I think it's a legal liability issue, not well, I mean, it's a soils geology issue ultimately, but in the final analysis, it becomes a liability issue.
yeah, and it's that house that's directly below it that he
Yeah.
was mostly concerned with.
Okay. One of the reasons I started looking at the purple route is because his suggestion that we be on the other side of it in his public comment.
Right.
Well, I'm going to
Um,
propose that we stop here unless you have anything more substantive to add.
Well, I just have a quick question. So I have 2 questions. One's more of a comment, but I'm curious. I'd be curious to talk to a soils geologist. So I've just been thinking with the nature of decomposed granite or granitic soils and the fact that they're more unstable when they're dry, it seems. How much of an issue relative to clay soils is slides when there's big rain events, because it handles water so well? I'm just curious. How many examples are there are there examples of large slides or even small slides, not a slump, but a big slide of yeah. Does
I
anyone
can
know?
give you one example that was used when we discussed Lower Wonder Trail.
Mhm.
So it used to go a different way. We rerouted it, but it basically went down a roadbed that culminated in, I don't know what the road is called there, but basically at the bottom of Lower Red Queen.
Okay.
And that whole hillside went into the road.
Wow.
Just sort of, there was a big rain event. I don't know when, probably during the
Answer.
flooding.
It's good enough for me.
But I mean, yeah, it can happen. Again, that was a roadbed too. And we're talking a trail. I think there is a distinction. I'm not sure that distinction is always made with engineering geologists.
Yeah, I was just curious.
But they're all,
It depends on how the water's handled too. It absorbs water nicely, but if it gets rolling, it gets eaten out. And the other example we ran into was Fell on Knee, because water got rolling down Hit Road and almost took out the subdivision.
Right.
It starts washing out easily.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe it's more of a cumulative or overtime issue than it is one-time event issue. Like
Well,
a
the
clay,
other thing would
like
be
a
if
clay
you-
hillside would be.
If you use bailout two, talk about how you're gonna handle the water.
Mhm.
You need to figure out how to distribute it so it doesn't fly down it.
Right. So the other issue, just to further answer your question, Casey, one of the things that I think an engineering geologist brought to my attention was that, yes, the granitic soils absorb water really well, but when they're used as a trail, the trail starts developing sort of a 1/2 inch to inch thick solid barrier, and then water no longer absorbs quite as well.
Yeah, it's all compacted.
Yeah, it's all compacted, and I've seen that. I still believe that the granitic soil is absorbing a lot of water, way more than just about anywhere else that I've ridden or run. I'm in Bend right now, and the trails are unusable because the water just doesn't get absorbed. It just
Right.
sort of sits in puddles, and then it freezes, and then it thaws, and you still have puddles. It's not going anywhere. Unlike on our watershed right now is not a good example because it hasn't rained in a while, but we just don't get puddles. That's just not a common phenomenon for us.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. No, I appreciate the insight. It's a lot of interesting soil geology stuff to learn
Yeah.
about. Well, that's all I had, so I'm good.
David, Silly, all good for adjourning?
Yep.
Hey, our meeting is adjourned at 10:20.